Wes, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you joining in and being a part of Once Upon a Movie. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. So, when did you first start, I guess, your movie journey, let's call it? When is your first memory of the first movie you ever saw?
Man, I don't know. I probably don't even remember the titles of the first movies I saw. Because I just always kind of remember my parents had like a VHS collection, and it was a lot of the Disney. I think they were called Black Diamond, VHS releases. So I remember growing up watching like Sleeping Beauty and Aladdin, and Mulan was a big one. I just really loved those movies a lot. Those were a blast. I grew up. I probably actually the tape that I probably played the most was the Brave Little Toaster tape. So I've always loved movies, even when I was just a little kid. I guess I first started like maybe taking a more serious interest in movies in high school, where I started really getting into like classics and watching a lot of Alfred Hitchcock was a big one. Stanley Kubrick started creeping up in there at that time in my life. Yeah, so my film journey kind of has a few like pivotal starts, I guess. Obviously, growing up with the VHS collection, and then in high school taking the deeper interest. But I think it really, really, really took a dive maybe when I was like 21, 22, and I kind of just didn't have anything going on in my life. It was like work and then home and then work and then home. And, movies kind of became the thing that wasn't work or home. And it was I could go to the theaters and watch a movie, and it was like a really fulfilling experience. And I enjoy going. Some people, there's a stigma around going to the theater by yourself, but I actually really enjoy going to the theater by myself. I think it's great, and almost to the point where I'm disappointed when a friend wants to come with me. Not that I don't like seeing movies with friends, but sometimes it's like, oh man, the cinema is like my special me time place. But it's great. I love sharing movies with people, and I love watching them by myself as well. Yeah, that's a big question. I just feel like the film journey's been kind of there in my life in some aspects the entire time, for sure.
So you mentioned going to the movies by yourself. 100% with you on that. I love
Yeah.
going to the movies by myself. It's everybody thinks I'm a psycho for it, but I'm just like, do you go to the movies and are you talking throughout the movie? I'm like, I'm not turning to you every 2 seconds and going, "Did you see that? Did you see that?" I don't need somebody to like go, yeah. I
Right,
love the
right.
experience, and I love escaping for that time frame. You
Yeah.
mentioned that the I guess the journey kind of came in different parts of your life. You're also a film collector, so you're not just a lover of cinema, but you collect movies. I've been following you on TikTok since I started my accounts in August. So, it's been pretty much seeing your journey in that. Would you say that around that age is when you started getting into film collecting as well, or has that all kind of happened earlier?
Yeah, I would say probably like when I was 21, 22 is when I really started collecting. Like I always had like a small stack of DVDs, but it was like a pretty small stack. Like it was like maybe anywhere between 5 to 10 DVDs at one time. I really started getting into film. Actually, my friend Michelle, she bought me the Tarantino XX Blu-ray set. I didn't even have a Blu-ray player at the time, so I actually had to go out and buy a Blu-ray player in order to watch the movies. But and that was like my first like Blu-ray set, and that like was the first time I like held a physical media set and like noticed that a lot of like detail and care had been put into its presentation, and just all the supplements and special features that were included on each disc. And then I had like two bonus discs, and I was just like, wow, okay, there's like a real, like, people really care about the presentation and like putting so much love into these collections. And it kind of like opened my mind. And I remember hanging around Barnes and Noble and seeing the Criterion collection. I didn't really know what it was, but I remember that the cases looked really nice,
Yeah, yeah.
and I was like, these are cool. And so sometimes I would just walk by and look at the cases because it was like nice art. A few of the movies, as I was looking at them, sounded really interesting, so I bought them. And through that, I learned what the Criterion collection was, and I was like, oh, there's a whole market out here of people making really nice, putting a lot of care and work into, presenting a film in a physical media package. And that kind of like that sparked my interest, I think. And I started collecting Criterion's mostly, and then that branched out into learning about other boutique physical media labels. And so I just it kind of just spiraled out of control at that point. I was like, okay, I got to buy everything now.
Yeah.
Like every time I see a nice physical media release of a movie I love, like I'm like immediately there. Like even if I already own the movie, sometimes I'm like weighing my options. I was like, do I want to double dip? Do I do I need another copy? Most of the time I talk myself out of it, but sometimes I don't.
The
It's
answer
just
is always yes.
yeah, yeah. The answer is always yes. It depends. It really depends. Sometimes I'm like, do I really need the newest edition of Psycho? I already got it on 4K. I already got like 6 different copies of Psycho. I
Yeah.
was like, I think I'm good on that one. But if they do come out with like a super nice new set of it, I'll definitely take a look at it. Yeah, it just kind of spiraled out of control from the moment I learned what Criterion was, and that there was just this whole market. And I think I found the Reddit too, boutique Blu-ray subreddit, and like everybody was sharing their pickups there, and like so many of them are so cool, and some of them are movies I've never heard of before, but they sound so interesting, and it just kind of really created a hobbyist like interest in me, and like yeah, I've just been like super passionate about it ever since.
That's amazing. So really, your friend kind of got you hooked just from.
Yeah, Michelle started it all. Shout out to Michelle.
That's awesome. Do you remember the first DVD you bought?
I think it was Phantom of the Opera, Joel Schumacher's.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was that one. I don't have it anymore, because I actually, after a while, I realized I didn't like the movie that much. But for a while, I thought it was really cool, and I don't know, it didn't. I feel like I could probably watch it now and I would like it a lot better. But there
Yeah.
was like a period in my life where I probably just seen it too many times, and I was like, I'm not really into this anymore. So, yeah, I don't have that movie anymore. But I do believe that was probably my first DVD. Yeah.
Let me ask you this before I go back into the main set of questions. How many movies have you gotten rid of but found yourself buying back again?
Um, so many. To the point where I keep a stack if I'm thinking of getting rid of it,
Yeah.
and basically I just like I have to keep that stack separated, sequestered away for like 3 months before I can actually like take it to the Goodwill or to wherever I'm donating it. And I did a really dumb thing after I had built up a sizable DVD collection, where I was like, I want to upgrade all of them to Blu-ray. And I did a really dumb thing and got rid of pretty much all of them, and like I wrote them down on a list. It was a bad decision. I'm still paying for that decision, and I was like, I'll just write the list down, and then over time I'll just upgrade them to Blu-ray. And then that was when I learned that things go out of print.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're just not available again. Luckily, I think I've replaced just about everything that I really care about. I think there's only maybe like a handful of movies that have slipped through the cracks at this point that I maybe haven't been able to replace. But I have definitely got on eBay and spent $60 on a Blu-ray because I was like, damn it, it's out of print. Now I'm gonna have to pay out the nose for it.
Yeah.
So
I've been there, man.
yeah.
I feel your pain. I feel your pain. Throughout the years, I mean, obviously you've gone through, childhood watching your Disney movies, learning about Criterion. So the question is, how has your taste in movies changed over the years? And what do you think has influenced these changes?
I think it's changed a lot. Like I went through like this whole phase where I like decided that I was too grown for everything that I liked before, which is such a silly phase to go through. But I feel like maybe hopefully all of us go through it at one point, either that or, I'm just special in that regard. But I definitely went through a phase where I was like, oh, I liked this when I was younger. Can't possibly be good anymore. But now I'm kind of like at the state where I'll just watch anything, any genre, any time period, any international film, any domestic film, like as long as it's not like obvious, violence towards, real violence towards people type movies, other than like snuff or anything like that, I'll watch anything. I'll watch extreme horror, I'll watch, romantic comedy, I'll watch a, animated film made for kids. There's so much to love it in all corners of film, and like I think that's really been like the biggest thing I've learned throughout like my film journey, is that you're always going to be able to find something that surprises you no matter what the genre is. And like that's been the most exciting thing, is just finding new things that excite me, new things that are surprising, that just like really move me or hit me or like make me think, or like even if the movie itself doesn't have a story that I particularly care about, if it's made really well, that's exciting too, to see, just a a technical achievement. Like this might be controversial. I don't love La La Land. I
Okay.
know that's like a super duper popular movie, but every time I watch it, I'm stunned by how beautiful it is
Yeah.
aesthetically.
Yeah.
But by the time the movie ends, I'm like, yeah, whatever. But like it's so pretty. I love watching it. Every shot of the film is just gorgeous. And so like that's kind of been my like the biggest thing I've learned is that like, you know, films are such a big collaborative effort that takes so many different creative, people working together to in order to make it, that even if it's something that altogether doesn't work for me, I can usually find something to appreciate about it.
Is there a particular aspect of filmmaking that fascinates you the most?
Yeah, I love like editing, honestly. like um and that's something I've kind of realized that I've loved just ever since I got on TikTok, because I realized as I was talking with more and more people that I would always kind of end up talking about editing. And like I think somebody even pointed it out to me once. They're like, you talk about editing a lot. And I was like, yeah, I know. But I just love when somebody can edit something and make it really like creative. And like I think editing is a very powerful part of the whole storytelling process, because you can really shape a film like in so many different ways just through an edit, through cutting it in different ways. There was this movie I saw not too long ago called The Cremator. It's from like the 60s. It's like a Czech new wave film from Czechoslovakia. And it's just the weirdest thing. It's edited so strangely. And like, it just blew my mind when I watched it. Like, anytime it would do this thing where it would like zoom in on an object in the frame, right? And then it would zoom out and the scene would be totally different. Like that was the cut. And like
Interesting.
I didn't even know how they did it. They like snuck the cut in there somewhere where I wasn't expecting it. And it just like blew my mind every time. And like even after like the fourth or fifth time the film did that, I was like still blown away every time. I was like, oh, they did it again. And it was just so interesting. And I just love it when a film can do that. Like I think editing is like the rhythm and the like lifeblood of a film. And yeah, I love when a film's edited really well. I mean, like films like Pulp Fiction where the story is told completely out of order,
Yeah.
but somehow it like is still really cohesive and interesting, and it's got so much energy. Like if you put that film in chronological order, it wouldn't have the same like feel, it wouldn't have the same energy. And I think that's something that's really incredible about editing.
Have you, and this is just based off of your answer, very controversial film, Irreversible,
Oh yes.
Gaspar Noé.
Yeah.
It's to this day, it's still one of those films that hits aggressively hard. Like, there's just no, I don't care if I've seen it 10 years ago, I don't care if I saw it yesterday, it still hits. And it's such a unique film. I mean, everything about it, right? From the name to the way that it's shot, the
Yeah.
editing in the film. Have you had a chance to see it? I'm sure you've seen it, but have you had a chance to revisit it recently with the new edit change that they did?
No, I actually have that edition up on my shelf here. I've only seen the movie once.
Yeah.
And I do one day plan to watch the straight cut. Uh, but that film is so incredibly hard to watch.
Yes, it is.
And I feel like the straight cut might almost be harder because it doesn't become the beginning of their day. It'll just go right through to the revenge part of the movie.
Yeah.
And so I'm a little nervous. I'm hesitant for sure, but I think I like Gaspar Noé as a director. I know that Irreversible is super controversial, but I think it's a good film. I've seen it the one time. It is. I definitely understand the people who don't want to see it.
Yeah.
Like that's nobody should have to see something that is going to make them uncomfortable. I'm very interested to see the straight cut, and I think there is a secret cut of Memento too that is actually in chronological order.
Really?
Um, I think it
Did
was
not know that.
included as like an Easter egg on one of the DVDs, but none of the DVDs of it that I've ever owned. So,
Yeah.
so, and I'd like to see that too because I think that would be interesting. But I also think that both films probably work the way that they do because they were told in that reverse format.
Yeah.
Whereas I, I think it's an interesting experiment to then go back and make them chronological, but I don't know if it would make it like a better film,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah. I have the same version, the one that you're talking about, and I had only seen it once when it first came out. So this was years ago, and my wife, like My wife's not a person that would go out of her way to watch a movie. Like when she met me, she's like, "Wow, you love movies." I'm like, "Yeah, I kind of do."
Yeah.
It's a deal breaker if you don't watch a movie with me every now and then. But over the last 5.5 years, she has picked up on like everything that I watch, and I've slowly kind of graduated her into more intense films, if you will. Like Irreversible was not a movie that I'm like, hey, we should watch this tonight.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
no, and she knew that this was one of those films that like is in like my top five of like they've just affected me. They're films that
Mhm.
have kind of changed me. And we watched it recently, so I watched it when that release came out. But I did not watch the chronological order one. I made sure to watch the original version with her. So I still haven't seen that version either. And I am not gonna lie, it was equally as tough watching it a second time around as it was the first time. Yeah, it's one of those movies that I don't know if I will. If I do, it'll probably be another 10 years from now before I kind of
Right.
go back into it. I'm not kind of in the mood for it. And speaking of movies in general, is there one specific movie in your life that is just one that has always stayed with you, um, being memorable or just, you know, part of a core memory of sort? And would you be willing to share why that movie is one that has always kind of stayed with you?
Yeah. I adore the original 1933 King Kong. I know that's so nerdy, but I absolutely adore that movie. I think it is everything a movie can be. Like it's got the adventure, the romance is super dated and awkward and terrible, but it's got it. um, and it's a big special effects extravaganza, but it's also like a super duper interesting commentary on like colonialism and like the selfish director that only cares about getting his shot and not about the people who will work under him. And like it's got everything going for it. It's so smart and it's so intense and it's just like it's just epic in every way. And I really like that movie because I was able to watch it with my niece. She was like 9 years old, and she doesn't like movies. She thinks movies are lame. But like I put that on, and she was like sucked in like immediately. And this is a movie that's like at the time it was like 86 years old because this was maybe 5 or 6 years back. Now it's like 90 something years old. But like she was just sucked in. She had her hands over her eyes during the intense
That's
parts. Like
awesome.
it was so great. And then like after it ended, like I guess it like was too intense, and her father had to like pull her aside, I guess, and be like, it's just a cartoon. It's pretty, they're stop motion animation. It's pretty much a cartoon. Like King Kong's not real, all of that was fake. So like it was kind of just like a really exciting experience. And like it just made me think of like when I was a kid watching something like Jurassic Park for the first time as a kid, like that was just the most intense thing ever. Like, and that's a core memory too. Jurassic Park 100%. I think King Kong and Jurassic Park, like they're on the same family tree of film history in my opinion. And like uh, they're just both so amazing. And I just remember as a kid the when the T-Rex is stepping outside and you see the water ripple in the cup,
Yeah.
and just like how intense that was. And like years later, every time I watch Jurassic Park, it still blows my mind how awesome it is. And yeah, those two are good ones. There's so many films that have like a core memory in my heart. Honestly, Gremlins is another one because that was like the first movie that like scared the crap out of me as a kid. Um, yeah, I just those are all great movies. I think maybe the original Star Wars, not so much for me as a lot of other kids, but I do remember watching Star Wars as a kid on VHS and like loving it. Um, I don't think it has like as strong a place in my life as Star Wars fans today hold it up to that pedestal, but I definitely loved the original Star Wars. I remember seeing 2001: A Space Odyssey in the theaters the first time I saw it for some like Fathom Events thing or something, and I remember hating it. I was like, "This is garbage. What on earth did I just watch?" And my friend Brian was sitting next to me, and he was like, "No, it's brilliant. Let me tell you all about it." And he like explained it to me, and I walked away going like, "Okay, whatever." But then it like stuck in my head. It was like stuck in my head. The movie just like kept playing in my head over and over again, and it was like 3 years it was playing in my head, and I was like, "Okay, I just got to watch this movie again." So I went to the store and I bought the Blu-ray, and I came home and I watched it again, and like something about it just hit that time, and I was like, "Oh, I get it." And,
Yeah.
and now it's like one of my favorite films. Like just blew me away. Yeah, just so many great films that have impacted my life for sure.
I feel like that's every Stanley Kubrick movie.
Yeah,
Whether you like it or not, it still stays with you. There's just something very
yeah,
hypnotic about all of his films. I find it so intriguing. I actually, same thing with the 2001. I saw it the first time. I was like, what the hell is this?
yeah,
I was just, but you're younger and like there's a certain tempo to your life and to the things that you watch and to the things that you gravitate to, especially in a very specific time in your life. Sometimes I'm just not in sync with that rhythm. It's just not it for me. And then I'll watch it years later and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. I've had that with so many movies.
yeah.
One of the recent ones that I've posted about was The Village. I saw it when I was in high school and freaking hated it. Hated it so much and just recently watched it like 2.5, 3 weeks ago. And I'm like, oh my God, this movie's amazing. So it's just, I totally, totally get that. This kind of piggybacks, you kind of answered it a little bit, but is there a movie that, I guess you have a personal connection with, perhaps because it mirrors part of your life, something that is, many may not know about, but it's just a movie that just resonates with you in a different way. It may not be a great movie, but there's just something about it that for you, it does have that connection because there is some sort of uh, parallel to your life with that film.
Yeah. Wow, that's a big question. That movie Eighth Grade,
Bo
was that
Burnham.
Bo Burnham?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Um, I really felt for that awkward eighth grade girl. I really felt for that because I felt like I was the most awkward person in the world in eighth grade. Like so many of those conversations, and the fact that she had the bravery to like stand up for herself just meant so much to me because I never did in high school for
yeah. Mm,
sure, or junior high even at that point for sure. Never had the bravery to stand up for myself. You don't really see a lot of movies about, you know, teenagers that's like real. It's always kind of like dumbed down because teenagers do go through like an awkward stage of life that is really hard to put on film,
yeah.
respectfully and tastefully for sure. And I just was so impressed by that movie and how it managed to capture that. She was so awkward. Oh my goodness, I felt for her so bad. Like there have been movies too that I've related to at times when I wasn't in a good place in my life either. Like I've related to Scott Pilgrim a lot, and he's a total douchebag.
Mm,
Um, he does learn a lesson and get a little bit better by the end of the film. But yeah, and I think films can be a wake up call in a way sometimes when you are relating to maybe more toxic characters, and
yeah.
that's I think something valuable that can happen. Certainly the opposite can happen too, where you see a toxic character in a film and you are like, oh yeah, if it's in a film, it must be okay. But
Yeah.
I try not to think in that way. But yeah, Easy A, that's
I
another
love
one.
that movie.
And that movie is so
So good.
funny. Um,
Emma Stone
yeah,
is hysterical. I mean,
I feel like
she's.
she has the mouth that I wish I had as a high schooler because she is just so snappy and sharp and
Yeah.
witty and kind of crass but so
Yeah.
funny. Fantastic film.
There's something about her that is
Yeah,
just very just there's a presence to her and I feel like she really is that person in a lot of the movies that she does. That a lot of it isn't really acting, and Easy A is one of those examples where it's just like she's just it's like
yeah,
super bad, that same
yeah.
kind of just the way she speaks, and also in Amazing Spider-Man, I loved her in that.
Yes,
And at that
so
time,
good.
because her and totally,
Andrew Garfield.
thank you, they were dating at that time, so
Yeah,
there's real chemistry on screen, and it was just that much more powerful of a film. And I feel like she's a great role model. I always think of like, if I want my daughters to be like somebody, I want them to have her personality, because I feel
yeah,
like she can defend herself verbally, and it's like in this day and age where like not just defend herself, but she can also stand up for others. It's just she's a very powerful woman. I love that. And her Oscar speech recently, it was one that I hear all these speeches and it's like whatever. I was tearing with her. I'm like, why am I crying? I'm
yeah,
I'm not on that stage. This isn't my award, but I felt what she felt, and just
yeah,
it was beautiful. And then the whole comment about her daughter and Technicolor, it was just fantastic, fantastic. But yeah,
yeah.
I
I
love Emma
absolutely
Stone.
love her.
Going through all these different eras in your life and seeing all these different films, and obviously you loving technical aspects of such. how do you feel that movie industry has evolved during your lifetime, and like what changes, in your opinion, have been the most significant, to you?
Yeah, I really like the way that the new technology has kind of made it very possible for incredibly small budget films like Everything Everywhere All at Once to have a large sci-fi scale and like still feel very large and grand and epic. I really like that. I think there's been so much in the ways of technology nowadays where a low budget film can look very similar in quality to a high budget film, at least in the terms of cinematography, picture quality, lighting, all of that. Of course, I do also have a problem with like how CGI has kind of taken over everything in the big budget area. Um, I was watching Sleepy Hollow by Tim Burton not too long ago, and I was like so struck by just how stark the cinematography was, just how like dark and gloomy, and how amazing the production design of the set was, and the costumes were so textured and detailed. And like I feel like a lot of modern films kind of miss that, because a lot of the costumes nowadays are kind of, especially when you get to like Marvel films or superhero films in general, they have a costume, but then it's completely covered in like CGI.
Yeah.
So like kind of like the detail is a little bit lost. Like I don't know, and especially when you like compare like maybe like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy with John Watt's Spider-Man trilogy. There's parts in both that I think have issues, and there's parts in both that I think really stand out. But what stands out to me about the Sam Raimi trilogy is just how textured and detailed the costumes are. Even though there are CGI shots in that film as well, it always cuts back to a real shot of a real person in a real costume. And I think it just like adds that layer of authenticity to it that I think it has been a little bit lost. Certainly, it's not like across the board, an issue, but it definitely has creeped into the kind of atmosphere of the big budget films. But there's also a lot of good going on with these new technologies. I think like the big LED screen that they use now, I forget what that's called.
The
Yeah, for
backgrounds,
like the
right?
Mandalorian.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool like advancement. It's an upgrade of the green screen, but it allows like the actor to kind of feel like they're more in their environment instead of I'm standing on a soundstage in front of a green or blue screen.
Yeah.
I think the best thing that has changed in my life technologically is that indie films can work with a camera that has the same picture quality or very close to the same picture quality as a big budget film now. And whereas back in the day, an indie film was shooting on like a, you know, whatever they shot primer on. And so the picture quality obviously suffers a little bit.
Yeah.
But, the film is still brilliant. Like, you know, but like it's nice now that like those films on the lower budgets have access to technology that, doesn't necessarily immediately out them as being a micro budget production.
I usually get taken out by a lot of the CGI, even in
Yeah.
action movies. Like I grew up with movies that I probably shouldn't have grown up with, watching RoboCop and back when they had, actual slugs, and it's just explosions.
Yeah.
And it genuinely pisses me off when I'm watching a movie that's an action film and the shots and blood are CGI. I'm like, really?
Yeah. It never
Why?
looks real. I don't know why they haven't. It seems like blood splatter should be like an easy thing to get,
Yeah.
like accurate and looking and realistic. But for some reason, they just, I don't know, they haven't figured it out yet. And it does not look good.
It's obnoxious.
Um,
That could be a
I
podcast
also hate when
episode
they
all on
use a
itself.
CGI blade in
Oh
horror
yeah.
movies,
Yeah.
and you can like totally see it like wiggling around
Yeah.
when they stab. It's like, okay.
I could go on for hours on that one. Just that topic alone just annoys the hell out of me.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're a fan of cinema. You have passion for movies. You have a collection behind you. You got some great posters. So I have to ask, what movie would you recommend to someone wanting to understand your love for cinema?
King Kong, 1933.
Okay.
That's the ultimate one. King Kong, and then watch the 6-part documentary about the making of.
Okay.
And then you'll understand my entire love of film.
Fair enough. Like you mentioned that you've seen some movies where you're just in a bad place. Is there a movie that has just impacted you emotionally to that level? And how was it that it got you there?
Yeah. I think the movie that I've not been able to sit through without crying yet is Moonlight. I sob basically through the entire last third of that film.
Yeah.
So Moonlight for sure is just incredible. The performances, Trevante Rhodes should have been nominated. I know that Mahershala Ali, I think, got the nomination for that film,
Yeah, I think so.
and he definitely deserved it. But they really snubbed Trevante Rhodes because he I know he's only in the final third of the film, but he just really just pulled so much emotional heavyweight with his performance, and it was really incredible. There's a micro budget film called Coherence, a science fiction film. Um, and the first time I saw that, it was just so mind bendy that like I was like terrified of like my life for like a week
Yeah.
afterwards. I was like, am I even in my own life right now? What's going on? And like it was just like everything was so like I was questioning everything after that movie. Because it was just so well done, and the way it like slowly unraveled and like revealed kind of what was going on blew my mind. But yeah, that one really affected me too.
That one slid into my top 10 best movies ever.
Nice.
Just, I saw it on Amazon on a Saturday morning because I was just bored out of my mind. My girls were running around and they just did not want to stay quiet. I'm like, I'll just put whatever on. And I saw this thing, Coherence. I'm like, this looks low budget as hell. Whatever. This will be background noise. And I was, the first 20 minutes, I almost turned it off. I'm not going to lie. I was like, what are they shooting this in? Is it like, it looks like cell phone call. I'm like, the
Yeah.
shakiness of the camera and everything. And then it just hooked me. And dude, I just, holy crap. I was so
Yeah.
blown away. And I completely forgot I was watching my girls. I was like, what is going on in this movie? Blew me away. And then, of course, did a deeper dive after the movie was over, you know, when just learned about everything I could about this movie, who made it. And then I learned that the film was shot with like a Canon 5D Mark III. I'm like, you know, there half of it was improvised. I'm like, what the hell is going on? How did this come to be? This is amazing. I think I bought it. Like I bought the physical copy like right away. I'm like, this has to be a part of my collection, 100%. The movie's insane, absolutely insane. So yeah,
Hell yeah.
it's just one of those movies, man. It's like, what the hell? Like you're just not expecting it, and it's like you just goes to show you don't need crazy budget. You just need a good story. And that was
Yeah.
it.
I
That
mean,
was
it's pure movie magic for sure. Just how they pulled that all together.
yeah,
Incredible.
it really is. Is there any filmmaker or actors that you follow closely, and what draws you to their work?
When I was first getting into film, I really liked Marion Cotillard because she was in La Vie en Rose, which is about Edith Piaf. It's a French film. And I don't know, I just really liked her because she was so scrappy. She came up from really humble beginnings and became like the most famous French singer basically ever. And I really liked that performance that Marion Cotillard had. And then shortly thereafter, I saw her in Inception as is that their last name? Cobb? Mal Cobb, yeah. Dom's wife, Leonardo DiCaprio's wife in Inception. And I don't know. I just always thought she was really like had this amazing screen presence, and so I kind of started looking up her films from France, which were like A Very Long Engagement, which I really loved.
Have you seen Rust and Bone?
No, I really wanted to see
Oh,
that
you
though.
need to see that. That's a beautiful
Yeah,
film.
that was one that was really high up on my list, but I don't know. It just kind of slipped through the cracks, I guess. And then I can't remember what the other film she made in France that I really liked was called. It was La Vie en Rose, A Very Long Engagement, which she was really good in. I can't remember the other one, but I just really liked her for a really long time. And then uh, when she kind of stopped making films in America so much, I think she kind of started making more films in France again. And you know, a lot of times those don't come over the pond for a really long
Yeah.
time. So I don't know. I guess I kind of stopped keeping track of like uh, her after a while. I need to catch up clearly because I still haven't seen Rust and Bone. Yeah, she was like my favorite for a really long time. And then I also really like Denzel Washington is incredible in everything he's in. I've really loved him in Philadelphia, in Training Day, of course. He's terrifying in Training Day, but so
Yeah.
good. Malcolm X, fantastic film. And I've just always really liked him. He has an amazing screen presence. The Tragedy of Macbeth. Oh, he was so good. So I've really liked him throughout his entire career. Um,
And he has claims that King Kong ain't got shit on him. So there you go.
Yeah, King Kong ain't got shit. So I guess
It's full
that's why
circle.
he's number one here.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I really like Marlena Dietrich too. She's like 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. I don't know when she passed away, but that time period.
Mhm.
Um, she's very like on the verge of camp a lot of the time, but she also has like this crazy like steamy sexual energy about her. Like she was in this movie called Morocco where she plays like a vaudeville singer, and she's like wearing like this dapper suit, and she has like a cigar hanging out her mouth while she sings, and like she's amazing. She's got screen presence. Like there's no other way to like describe it. She's just got screen presence. And I love so many actors and actresses. Honestly, it's to the point where like when somebody tells me they dislike an actor or actress, unless it's like someone who's like outright terrible, like in almost everything they're in, I'm like, why? Why do you dislike them? They're so good in this and this and that. Like, I've had like my parents don't like Ben Affleck, and I'm like, why? He's so good in Argo. He's so good in Gone Girl. Like, why? Ben Affleck's amazing. And then they'll be like, oh, I didn't like him as Batman, or they'll name some other like movie that he was in that wasn't very good. And I was like, oh, well, you're watching the wrong Ben Affleck. so like, yeah, I have a really high appreciation for actors who have a wide range, who don't kind of get typecast, which I know isn't always their choice, but actors who like Emma Stone, who we were talking about earlier, who she does weird movies like Yorgos Lanthimos, Poor Things, and she also does really mainstream teen movies like Easy A. She has her hands everywhere. Yeah, and I have a lot of respect for that.
Thoughts on Amy Schumer? Just random. This is like completely. I just. What are your thoughts on Amy Schumer? This is not on the list, but you just mentioned, finding the good in actors, and I can't stand Amy Schumer.
She fits in the outright bad category.
Okay. All right, cool. just want to see where you're at.
I can't defend her.
Okay, because I was waiting to see if you could, because I was curious to go. I wonder what he's going to throw at me.
Trainwreck was okay-ish. I watched it the one time, and I was fine with it being the one time. But I Feel Pretty was a mess. And was that her? I Feel Pretty? I'm thinking of the right movie, right?
I avoid her. I don't see anything that she's in. I have a huge problem with people that steal content,
Yes.
And the proof is out, that she just basically has no original thoughts. And I have no respect for that. And I can't support that, I don't care about like so much personal life, like Tom Cruise, for example, whole Scientology thing. I don't care. I could care less. The man entertains the hell out of me. He's an incredible actor. He is passionate about cinema. He wants people to go to the movies, and he's putting he's pretty much risking his life for entertainment, for our entertainment. And I'm like, whatever his craziness is on, it's not going to affect me. I don't care. I'm enjoying it. But when it's stuff like when it comes down to just, again, stealing, and just being a fraud, I can't get with that at all.
Yeah, I agree.
Anyways, that's my Amy Schumer rant. That's my Amy Schumer segment, which I think I'm just going to have now. It's just going to be called the Amy Schumer segment, where I just get to let out a little bit of steam, because
every guest needs to have a chance to defend Amy Schumer.
Talking about Amy Schumer, that's actually a thing. I'm going to do that. I like that.
Nice.
I like that. You mentioned your parents not liking Ben Affleck. That's a problem, because Ben Affleck is daddy in my home.
Yes.
I have the Batman statue right outside my office. I love Ben Affleck. I love his whole story, his coming up, just in film, and him and Matt Damon, how the whole thing is just incredible. And I have so much respect for him, because you see that growth as an actor. You do see his early work, and it's like, he wasn't the best, but I saw Ben Affleck on his very first acting gig. It's called The Voyage of the Mimi. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
I haven't.
It's a TV show that my science teacher in 7th grade showed us. And that was her selling point for this TV show. Anytime we wanted to watch it, it's like, oh, Ben Affleck's in it. It's called Voyage of the Mimi. And
that's amazing.
It was young Ben Affleck, yeah. But anyways, did your parents have any influence in terms of like your love for movies? Like, is there somebody in your household that is, I guess you could say, It's like it's another version of me.
Uh, no, not necessarily like another version of me. My mom actually didn't like movies so much when we were growing up. She kind of likes them more now. She actually enjoys, finding movies that, you know, sometimes I've never even heard of, and she'll call me up and she'll be like, "Oh, I saw this and it was really good, and you should look it up." And I'll be like, "Yeah, I'll look that up." But like when I was growing up, she didn't really like movies or TV at all. Like we were allowed to watch them, and sometimes we'd have family movie nights and stuff, but it just wasn't her thing. My dad likes movies, but he is very like kind of, or he was very specific. He's kind of more broad now. But when I was growing up, it was kind of just like 1960s movies, and usually they were like war films, or like The Manchurian Candidate from
Hmm.
1962 was a movie that we watched a lot, which is not a kids movie, but we watched that a
Not at
lot.
all.
And the 1960s Psycho was a film, like that was the only R-rated film I was even allowed to watch as a kid. But like, you know, so like I think, yeah, he definitely affected my taste there, because I love both of those movies. I love Psycho, I love The Manchurian Candidate, and I've since looked up other films, that have come around the same age that are about similar topics. There's a movie by John Frankenheimer, the same guy that did The Manchurian Candidate, called Seconds, that I've looked up because I knew Manchurian Candidate, and that movie is incredible, just absolutely amazing. So I would say that my dad definitely influenced my taste probably the most as a kid, but I've definitely like I've never really adhered to any of their like specific tastes, because I feel like I have a lot of curiosity towards like what's out there in film, and I always
Right.
want to be finding something weird and interesting and new, and something that's going to surprise me, or something that's going to make me think about topics I've never thought about before. And I think the people that I grew up with kind of were more about the entertainment aspect of film. Like I just want to toss something on and turn my brain off for a couple hours, and that's totally valid. I'm not poo pooing that at all. But like I don't know, I kind of never want to turn my brain off. I kind of always want to be like stimulated, and like I always want to like have a film make me question something and challenge me. And that's something that I personally really love about film, and a part of that did come from the fact that my dad was showing me like Psycho and Manchurian Candidate when I was like 13. And I was like, oh wow, this is really interesting stuff. And like, yeah, so I think, yeah, my dad definitely affected my taste, but I've branched out so much further than I think either of them would have probably thought.
Yeah. In your opinion, what's the most magical, let's use that word, magical aspect of cinema? And how has that influenced your appreciation for movies?
I think the most magical aspect is just like the fact that somehow, even though hundreds of hands worked on a film, somehow a singular message can shine through and like really affect somebody who's watching it. And like it's just a miracle. Like, especially now that I'm in film school and I've worked on one professional set, but many student sets, and like I've seen just how chaotic it can be. Like, and of course student sets are going to be so different than a Hollywood set. But it's just like it's really like just been such an eye-opening experience to see, like, it's like, how on earth does any film get made? And on top of that, how are any films even good? But like somehow hundreds of films come out every year that are just amazing. And people like to say that films are getting worse and worse and worse. I don't think they are. I think the focus has definitely shifted, and maybe the really good films aren't really being highlighted so much anymore, but great films come out every year. And
Yeah.
like, and I think you know, I personally don't love the streaming model, but it does give space for people to distribute their films who
Yeah.
may not have been able to otherwise. And that's a very good thing about streaming. And that's something that I appreciate about streaming. Um, and, and, and I just think, for the rest of the history of cinema, it's going to continue to be that way. There's going to continue to be changes, and there's going to continue to be amazing films despite any changes that challenge the creator. Great films are never going to stop being made, in my opinion, and I think that's really magical about film.
Love that. And I mean, you touched on a lot of points there. And one of the things too, I hear that all the time, that like we're not getting any good movies coming out and that sort of thing. It's just there's just a lot more now. That's really all it is. There's just so much more than there was before because so many of us have access to making films, you
Yeah.
know. So yeah, you're gonna say that not a lot of good films are coming anymore because there's just more to pick from, and for every 10 really shitty ones, there's one really good one. Versus back in the day where a lot of them were just, usually only the really good ones were the ones that were allowed to go through because nobody would even have the money to do it, and studios wouldn't even give it the time of day to, like, we're not going to make that. That sounds terrible. So
Right.
they'd make sure to produce some of the best films. And you mentioned too, you're in film school, so you are a filmmaker.
Yeah.
Um,
Aspiring.
Nothing wrong with that. We all start somewhere. Is there any work that you've done where anybody can like look at your stuff? Like, what have you been up to with that?
So you could go to my YouTube. I think it's just Wespresso. It might be Wespresso Bean. That's Wespresso or Wespressobean. Um, I've put my personal student short films. I think most of them are available. Some of them might be unlisted. So, but I think most of them are available to watch. None of them are super great. Don't get your hopes up. But I'm really proud of the work I've done. They're all first year films at this point. I don't have any of my second year films uploaded. I don't believe I do anyway. So all the films up there are my first year. Um, and the professional set that I worked on, I don't think that film has premiered yet. And when it does, it'll be at festivals. So I don't know how anybody's going to get access to that. I don't even know if I'm ever going to see the finished product at this point
Yeah.
because that was filmed over a year ago at this point now.
Wow.
I've heard no news. So we'll see. But yeah, you can check out, any of my student films, any of my personal projects on my YouTube channel. I believe they're all up there.
That's awesome. What did you do in the other film? What was your role?
In the professional
Yeah.
shoot, I was the second assistant camera. And it was a 3 camera shoot. So that meant I held a camera and so basically I was, like a co-DP. I don't think it was a long time ago. I was second AC and yeah, and I shot with one of the cameras, and there was the first AC shot with another camera, and then the DP had the other camera, and
Nice.
it was called like the Belle Dame Sans Merci, which is like the woman without mercy, I think, in French. And it was this medieval times like short film about like a plague had come over and there was like this big battle, and the film took place. It was a sword fight between 2 people, and then Lady Death came and like released the soldier from, after his battle. Like, it was really interesting visually. I didn't understand the plot so much, but that's not so much important when you're, just a
Yeah.
cameraman. You're like, okay, just tell me where to go and I'll go there and I'll film
Yeah.
it and I'll do what you need. But yeah, it was visually a very interesting film. And I'd love to see it completed, because sometimes when you see it completed, that like makes it make sense in your head. Like
Yeah.
sometimes reading the script is still confusing at times.
For sure.
but but yeah, hopefully one day I get to see that completed. That'd be nice. But yeah, that's my one IMDb credit.
Nice. Nice, man. Do you have
Yeah.
anything like coming up? Anything that like a passion project? Anything you want to kind of get out there?
Nothing personal, but I am working on a short film in my production 2 class, and we are all working on one film together. And that's pretty exciting because, the last quarter, it was like we broke up into groups and we all worked on our separate films, in little tiny groups. And it was like very difficult because when you have 3 or 4 people for a film and, 2 of them don't show up, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. So like this is very exciting because it's the whole class on one project. And, I'm pretty sure everyone's going to show up because you don't want to, fail. At least I wouldn't want to fail the class. So like hopefully everyone, is there, and, it's not like, last quarter was a bit hectic. But yeah, I'm very excited for that. The script that we chose was written by my classmate Grace. Great script. Very excited. It's like a aftermath of a not murder, but a accidental manslaughter, and trying to cover that up. And
Ooh.
it's a very intense. I guess you could call it a thriller. I don't really know what genre it would. Yeah, it's a thriller. It's more 2 people talking than like action, but it's still very intense. It's very emotionally hot.
It could
It's
be a
great.
thriller. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
So
thriller.
it
I'm
sounds
excited
like
to
a
watch it.
drama thriller. I like that.
Yeah.
What would you, for, I guess, for like more of the technical stuff, if you were to be able to do anything for the rest of your life in terms of like filmmaking, would you see yourself as a director, or would you want to be more of an editor? Like, what do you love the most?
I really want to be a director. And if that doesn't work out, cinematographer. I want to be on the camera crew at the very least. That's where I feel like I thrive. And I like editing, but really, I don't like being the editor.
Okay.
Like I love seeing great edits, and I love like when I am able to create a good edit or an edit that I'm proud of. That's also really satisfying and exciting. But
Yeah.
editing is a tedious job,
Yes,
and
it is.
yeah, and I'm bad with. I'm not the most computer savvy person. I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm bad with it. Like I know how to work in computer. I know how to use Adobe Premiere Pro. Like I'm pretty proficient in it, but it's one of those things that when it starts being weird, when things start freezing up, when things crash, it stresses me out so
Yeah.
much. And so that part of editing I despise, but looking at good editing, I love that.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. I saw The Royal Hotel, which
Mhm.
is one that you commented on my post, and you were like, "Oh, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it." Um, I want to know what your thoughts are on that movie before I say anything about that movie, because
I Yeah, I wanted to like it. I more
okay,
than I did. It's a very weird movie because the performances are all very good.
awesome.
The performances are great.
Mm-hmm.
The directing is really good. When
Mm-hmm.
it's supposed to be intense, it feels very intense.
Mm-hmm.
So like in that aspect, it is a well-made film, I guess. But where it loses me is it feels like maybe there was different threads of the script that weren't developed or were entirely chopped out of the film, maybe in the edit.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of places where like it seemed like the story was going to go somewhere and it didn't. And not because I was expecting something or I had preconceived notions, but because the story itself was kind of setting up that to be something that happened later. Like, especially with I can't remember her name, but the woman who owned the Royal Hotel, Hugo Weaving's was his wife in that film. It seemed like something was going to happen with her when she like called on the phone, was like, "I'm in trouble,"
Right. Right. Right.
and then like that was just a dropped thread. It never came
Mm-hmm.
back.
Mm-hmm.
And like I felt like the film did that in a few areas, and then I also felt like there wasn't enough like backstory. And it's like I don't need a ton of backstory, but like if the characters are going to go around having inside jokes with each other, which it felt like they did, like a lot of the dialogues didn't seem like when they would say that they were Canadian, like we're Canadian, like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
felt like obviously you're not Canadian because you're
Yeah.
saying it like that. But
Mm-hmm.
it's like, what's the utility of this? Why are you pretending to be Canadian? Like,
Right.
and then like Liv, I think the character's name was Liv, the brunette girl, was like, oh, we're just trying to get away from, you know, it's as far away as possible. And it's like, well, what are you trying to run away from? Like, you can't just drop a line like that and expect me not to be curious about
Yeah.
what it is you're running away from. And that was never picked up.
Nothing.
And then by the time the film ended, I was just like,
Did you want to throw something at the TV? Because I did.
no, it just felt so hollow. I don't think I was quite that upset. I was just like really perplexed. I was just like, what was the point of this? Like, it didn't have anything really to say. It wasn't necessarily coherent plot wise. It was directed well and it was acted well, and that's really all I can say for it.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I was so perplexed by it for sure. And like, I went on and read all the letterbox reviews, and everybody was giving it like high, like
Yeah.
4 stars out of 5. And I
Yeah.
was like, I was really confused. It was a bit of a head scratcher. I was like, this is a movie that if I, found flipping like back in the cable days, if I was flipping through Showtime or whatever and it was on and I watched it for like, I don't know, the last 45 minutes, I would have been like, oh yeah, that was, a fine time, whatever. I enjoyed that
45
45 minutes, whatever,
Yeah.
but like as a movie that I went to the theater and sat down and watched, no,
Yeah.
100% was not worth it. I was very confused. I was very perplexed by the praise it was getting for
Yeah,
sure.
I went on Letterbox as well, and I started reading the reviews, and I was like, we definitely saw a very different movie, because
Yeah.
I even watched the special features, saw the commentary that the director had made about feminism and all these other things about the film, and I'm like, did I miss something? Like, I'm
Yeah.
usually pretty smart about these things, but I was like, where in this are you trying to make this commentary? Because a lot of the stuff that you showed versus what you're saying you were trying to convey are two very different things. The brunette she was like, the
Yeah,
girl was like flirting with the guy and like making him feel like he was like, really something, and really like him. He's the reason she gets out of that car, because he rams his car into the other guys and beats the crap out of him. And now
right.
she's free. And then she comes inside the bar and she goes nuts on him and throws a bottle. I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah, that was so confusing to
Like
me as
everything
well.
about this movie, I'm like, what is this? So I
I
was,
just felt like the brunette was also just like a really bad friend because there was
she
so many
was,
times when Julia Garner's character came to her and said, "This isn't safe. The way these men are acting is not safe. We need
yeah,
to be cautious about that." And like every time the brunette character would be like, "Oh, you're overreacting.
yeah,
Stop it." And then like the next thing I noticed, like she's literally walking, into the car with the man that her friend just warned her about, and I was like, I I don't think women really do that. When I see women who are close friends, saying, "Hey, watch out for that man," like usually they have the mind to watch out for that man now. Like,
right, right.
I mean, it was really upsetting because you wanted to root, like you said, you wanted to root for these two girls, but you couldn't because like they weren't there for each other. Like they
No,
weren't even rooting for themselves. Like it's
no,
like,
they
how am
weren't.
I supposed to even care about your actions if you're not even listening to your friend, if you're not even regarding this very unsafe situation for what it is? Like it was really, really frustrating.
And then the ending, I think, pissed me off because it was like you got to do whatever you wanted to. You're not even from that country, and then on top of that, you light the whole place on fire. This establishment of where these people work in, and you walk away scot free. So there's no repercussions to anything that you've done. You
Yeah.
have zero accountability for anything. What is the message? What are we saying here?
Right.
Like,
And I honestly felt that ending was like, it kind of just pissed on everything. Cause like, now I just feel bad for the woman who owns the bar. And like, we don't know if she's even alive because she
right,
leaves that scary phone call and then never is heard again in the rest of the film. But like, if she is alive, whatever she was just a victim of, whatever assault may have happened or occurred to her, she's going to come home, bandage it up and see that she doesn't have a home anymore.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it was such a frustrating ending. It really felt hollow. It felt undeserved and it felt hollow.
All right, I'm glad I'm not the only one. This question I ask everybody before we finish, and it's a silly one, but I always ask it. Die Hard, is it a Christmas movie or is it not?
So I've never seen Die Hard.
Oh my God, what?
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. Everybody has that reaction when I say it. I really need to get around to seeing it. I just need to do it. But it's like one of those movies that's memed so much and like, like I feel like I've seen it. Like even though I haven't, like I feel like I've seen it. I know that like, he walks on glass at one point and he crawls through the air shaft. And I know that like when he gets spotted by Alan Rickman says motherfucker in a weird way and they like laugh about it and that like is a distraction.
Motherfucker.
So he's able to shoot people and like get away. And I feel like I've seen it, but one of these days I will have actually seen it.
Have you seen any of the other ones?
No, I've not seen a single
Oh
Die
my
Hard movie.
God. Okay,
Yeah.
so I have seen King Kong, the same one that you love dearly. However,
Yes.
I've never seen it in its original language. I only
Oh,
saw it dubbed over in Spanish.
that's kind of cool though.
Yeah, a lot of movies actually, a lot of older films I've only seen dubbed over in Spanish because I was born and raised in Costa Rica, and we
Nice.
didn't have there's no such thing as subtitles, and we just got really bad dubbing with like novela stars, so it sounds so dramatic, and it's the same voices, and they're horrible, like the worst voices you could ever imagine on a movie. Just yeah. So the experiences for a lot of things in my childhood, King Kong being one of them, was in Spanish. So there you go.
That's pretty amazing though. That's a special experience. You've seen a different King Kong than I have, and
Yeah,
it was probably a little bit more novella stars. It was probably a little bit more campy.
yeah.
But that sounds awesome.
The first time I saw Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy Krueger in Spanish.
That's
Te
amazing.
voy a encontrar, Nancy. It's so funny. It's so bad, And then
That's
you watch it
amazing.
in English and you're like, oh, wow, this is totally different. But, anyways, Wes, thank you so much for taking your time to talk to me about your love for movies and just being an awesome, awesome guest. I really do appreciate you being here. Anything that you want the people to know?
You can find me on TikTok at Wes Talk Movies or Wespresso_films. That's also my Instagram, and my letterbox is Wespresso. Um, and yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun talking about film. I never get to talk about film in this kind of unstructured, free way, so that's really exciting. And I've had a blast.
Amazing. Thank you again, Wes. And we will see you guys on the next one.